The shuttle doors opened, and Cole took her first step onto Apex Prime. The space station was bigger than any city she had ever seen on Earth. Lights of every color floated in the air. Strange plants grew from the walls. Alien students walked past her in groups, speaking languages that sounded like music, like thunder, like water flowing over rocks. She was 17 years old. She was the first human ever accepted into the Galactic Coalition Academy, and she was completely alone. A tall creature with a body made of blue crystal stopped in front of her. His eyes were like diamonds, cold and sharp. Other students gathered behind him, watching. "So this is the human," he said. His voice echoed like someone speaking inside a cave. I lead your training squad. I want you to know that I argued against your acceptance. The council made a mistake bringing your kind here." Looked up at him. He was almost 8 feet tall. She barely reached his chest. She said, "Nice to meet you." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Nice to meet you. How simple, how primitive." He turned to the others. "Look at her. No claws, no armor, no psychic abilities. Humans live for less than 100 years and they think they belong among us." The crowd laughed, said nothing. Her first week at the academy was the hardest of her life. The students, the crystal beings could process information 1,000 times faster than her brain. There were reptilian warriors who stood 7 feet tall and could crush metal with their bare hands. They could read thoughts and move objects with their minds. They had 4 arms and perfect memory. Had none of these gifts. She was small, she was soft. She was slow by their standards. During the physical assessment, she finished last in every test. The instructors wrote notes on their tablets and shook their heads. One of them, a named commander, looked at her scores and sighed. Strength, minimal. Speed, below average. Psychic ability, none detected. Special adaptations, none. He looked at her with something like pity. "You will be placed in remedial training. Try not to fall too far behind." Her roommate was a girl named Sarai. She had pale green skin and 4 arms that moved constantly, always doing multiple things at once. On the first night, Sarai sat on her bed and studied like she was looking at a strange insect. "I do not understand why you are here," Sarai said. "My people learned space travel 6,000 years ago. Yours discovered it less than 200 years ago. What can you possibly offer?" "I don't know yet," said honestly, "but I'm going to find out." Sarai made a clicking sound with her tongue. "I would prefer if you did not speak to me in public. It would be bad for my reputation to be seen with you." Nodded slowly. "I understand." She did not argue. She did not complain. She simply set her alarm for 2 hours before the morning bell and went to sleep. Every day followed the same pattern. Woke before sunrise and ran through the station's lower corridors where no one could see her. She studied the combat techniques of every species in the Academy library, watching recordings until her eyes burned. She memorized the biology of alien creatures, the history of galactic wars, the mechanics of starships. When assigned her broken equipment for flight simulations, she learned to fly manually without the computer assistance. When the students blocked her path in hallways, she found alternative routes and mapped the entire station in her head. When instructors ignored her questions, she found the answers herself. One evening, 3 students cornered her in the training bay. Their names were, and they were the largest students in the academy, each one capable of tearing her apart with minimal effort. "We want to see what a human is made of," said, cracking his massive knuckles. "They say your species breaks easily." Stood very still. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her breathing steady. She had read about they were predators. They responded to fear with aggression. They respected only strength or the appearance of strength. She looked directly into his eyes and did not blink. Seconds passed. The silence grew heavy. His tail twitched with uncertainty. Were used to their prey running or begging. This small human did neither. "Well," said quietly, "I'm waiting." His eyes narrowed. He leaned closer, his hot breath washing over her face. She still did not move. Something flickered in his expression. Confusion, discomfort. "This one is strange," muttered. "She is not worth our time," added quickly. Stared at her for another long moment, then stepped back. "We will finish this another day, human." The three of them left, their heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Let out a slow breath. Her hands were shaking, but she had not shown them that. Weeks passed. Her scores improved slightly, but she remained at the bottom of every ranking. The other students continued to mock her. The instructors continued to doubt her, made her life miserable at every opportunity, assigning her the worst tasks, the broken tools, the impossible deadlines. But something was happening that no one noticed. The academy was monitored by an ancient artificial intelligence called the Watcher. It had observed students for over 10,000 years. It had seen geniuses and warriors, psychics and shapeshifters, beings of incredible power from across the galaxy. Late one night, the Watcher reviewed Cole's file. It analyzed her performance metrics, her biometric data, her behavioral patterns. By every standard measure, she was unremarkable. And yet, she had not missed a single training session despite being injured twice. She had completed every assignment despite constant sabotage. Her stress hormones were elevated constantly, indicating fear and exhaustion, but her performance never decreased. If anything, it improved under pressure. The Watcher had a classification system developed over. It measured potential, threat level, and strategic value. For most students, these numbers remained stable throughout their time at the academy. Cole's numbers were climbing, slowly but steadily, in ways the Watcher had never observed in any species before. It added a note to her classified file. Human specimen displays anomalous persistence metrics. Psychology indicates high stress tolerance and adaptive learning patterns not previously documented. Recommend continued monitoring. Potential assessment, uncertain. This organism refuses to behave according to projected models. Far below, in her small room, Cole finished her exercises and sat down to study. She had 4 hours before she needed to sleep. That was enough time to read 3 more chapters on advanced stellar navigation. She was tired, she was lonely, she was surrounded by beings who wanted her to fail. But she was still here, and tomorrow she would wake up early and do it all again. That was what humans did. They endured. The announcement came on a cold morning 3 months after arrived at the academy. All students gathered in the great hall as Commander stepped onto the stage. His reptilian eyes swept across the crowd. "The survival gauntlet begins in 1 week," he said. "You will be dropped onto 9, a jungle moon with hostile wildlife and dangerous terrain. Your squads will have 7 days to reach the extraction point. You will complete strategic objectives along the way. There will be no outside help. Some of you will not return." A murmur ran through the students. The survival gauntlet was legendary. It had killed cadets before. It had broken the spirits of many more. Squad gathered that evening to prepare. Stood at the center, his crystal body glowing with authority. Sarai sat nearby, her 4 hands nervously fidgeting with equipment. A massive named leaned against the wall. He was one of the same students who had cornered weeks ago. The final member was a named, a thin gray being with large black eyes who could read surface thoughts. "Let me be clear," said, looking directly at. "If you slow us down, we leave you behind. Your survival is not our priority." "Understood," said. Dark eyes flickered toward her. "She means it. There is no fear in her thoughts about being abandoned, only calculation." Made a dismissive sound. "Calculate all you want, human. It will not save you on 9. The dropship released them into the jungle at dawn. The air was thick and wet, filled with strange sounds. Trees towered hundreds of feet above them, their bark covered with glowing moss. Things moved in the shadows, watching. Took the lead immediately. He set a brutal pace through the undergrowth, never looking back to see if could keep up. She could, but barely. Her legs burned. Her lungs ached, but she did not ask them to slow down. On the first day, they covered 20 miles. On the second day, they found their first objective, a beacon hidden in a cave system. Strength proved useful in clearing the blocked entrance. Sorai's multiple arms allowed her to operate the beacon's complex interface. Even psychic abilities helped detect dangers ahead. Contributed nothing obvious. She simply walked, observed, and remembered everything. That night, disaster found them. They had made camp in a small clearing, was on watch when the ground began to move. Thousands of small black shapes poured from the soil. Beetles. Their venom could paralyze and dissolve crystal. Screamed as they swarmed over him. Roared and started crushing them with his fists, but there were too many. Sarai stumbled backward, her forearms flailing in panic. Froze completely, his crystal body flickering with fear as he watched the beetles approach. Moved. She had read about beetles in the optional files, documents that most students ignored. She knew fire would repel them but attract larger predators. She knew their chemical receptors could be overwhelmed by certain compounds. She grabbed her pack and pulled out 3 things: a container of water purification tablets, a tube of medical antiseptic, and a handful of dried rations. She crushed them together, mixed them with water, and splashed the mixture in a circle around the camp. The beetles stopped, their antennae twitched, then they turned and retreated into the ground. Everyone stared at her. "How did you know that would work?" Sarai whispered. "I read about it," said simply. She was already moving toward who had collapsed on the ground. His gray skin had turned pale and his body was shaking. The venom was attacking his nervous system. She pulled off her belt and wrapped it around his arm above the sting marks. She had learned this from Earth's history books. It was called a tourniquet. It would slow the venom spread. Then she cleaned the wounds with the remaining antiseptic and elevated his arm. "He needs rest," she said. "At least 12 hours before he can walk." "We do not have 12 hours, snapped. "We will fall behind schedule." "If we move him now, he dies," said flatly. "If he dies, we fail the squad assessment. Your choice." His crystal form pulsed with anger, but he said nothing more. They waited, stayed awake the entire night, watching for more beetles, checking his condition every hour. By morning, he could stand. By noon, he could walk with support. Helped him, letting him lean on her shoulder despite the pain in her own exhausted muscles. On day 4, their navigation equipment stopped working. Something in the moon's atmosphere had fried the circuits. Tried to fix it for hours before throwing it against a tree in frustration. "We are lost," he admitted. "Without navigation, we cannot find the extraction point." Silence fell over the group. Sarai looked terrified. His tail drooped with despair. Even, still weak from the venom, seemed ready to give up. Looked up at the sky. "What are you doing?" demanded. "Looking at the stars." "The stars? What use are stars?" Pointed to a cluster of bright points visible through the canopy. "That formation is called the Shepherd's Crown. It points galactic north. The extraction point is northeast of our drop location. If we follow that star cluster and adjust our course 20 degrees east, we should reach the extraction zone in approximately 30 hours. Everyone stared at her again. "How do you know this?" asked. His voice had lost its usual mockery. "Humans used to sail across oceans using only the stars," said. "We did it for thousands of years before we had technology. It is not complicated. You just have to pay attention." She started walking northeast. After a moment, the others followed. She led them through swamps and across rivers. She found edible plants when their rations ran low because she had memorized the moon's botanical surveys. She spotted predator tracks and led them around danger because she had studied how to read animal signs from Earth's wilderness survival guides. When Sarai collapsed from exhaustion, carried her pack without complaint. They reached the extraction point 12 hours ahead of schedule. A shuttle was waiting for them, along with Commander, who reviewed their mission data in silence. Interesting, was all he said. But later that night, he sent a message to someone called Commander, a legendary general who had fought in 3 galactic wars. The message contained footage from the squad's helmet cameras. Commander watched a small human girl save her squad using nothing but knowledge and determination. He watched her lead them through darkness using ancient navigation techniques his own species had never developed. He watched her carry her injured teammate while fighting off exhaustion that would have broken most soldiers. When the footage ended, he leaned back in his chair and spoke to his aide. "Watch that one," he said. "Watch her very carefully." Far away on the shuttle back to Apex Prime, Cole slept for the first time in 3 days. Around her looked at her differently than before. They did not know what to call the feeling. It was unfamiliar. It was the beginning of respect. Word spread quietly through the highest levels of the coalition. In secure meeting rooms and encrypted communications, powerful beings discussed a human girl who had done the impossible on 9. The Council of Ancients requested her academic files. These were 12 immortal beings who had guided the coalition through 3 galactic wars. They had lived for thousands of years. They had seen empires rise and fall. And now they were curious about a 17-year-old from a small blue planet. The War College asked for her tactical assessment recordings. Their analysts watched her navigate the jungle moon using stellar positioning and could not understand how a species so young had developed such techniques. The answer, when they researched it, disturbed them. Humans had been doing this for tens of thousands of years. They had perfected it while still living in wooden boats on their oceans. Even the architects took notice. They were the oldest known species in the galaxy, the ones who had built the network that connected all civilizations. They rarely involved themselves in the affairs of younger races, but they sent an observer to sit in the back of classes and watch her. Knew none of this. She simply continued her routine: wake early, train hard, study everything. She had no idea that the most powerful beings in the galaxy were paying attention to her. But her classmates noticed something had changed. Was furious. The survival gauntlet should have proven that humans did not belong at the academy. Instead, it had made people talk about Cole with something other than contempt. He could not allow this. He gathered students who shared his anger, who believed in their crystalline superiority, who felt threatened by a small creature who did not fear them, who could not understand a mind they could barely read. The human cheated, told them. She must have used hidden technology. Perhaps she is not even a real human. Perhaps she is some kind of genetic experiment designed to infiltrate our academy. The rumors spread quickly, heard them whispered behind her back. She saw the looks of suspicion and hatred, but she said nothing. She had learned long ago that words rarely changed minds, only actions mattered. The combat tournament came at the end of the 4th month. Every student had to fight in single matches against opponents chosen randomly. His first opponent was a who underestimated her. She won in 2 minutes using a joint lock that the 4 arms could not escape. Her second opponent was more careful, a who tried to predict her movements by reading her thoughts, but had trained herself to think of nothing during combat. She emptied her mind and fought on pure instinct. The could not read what was not there. She won again. Her third match was supposed to be against a single student, but when she entered the arena, 3 of them were waiting for her. The same 3 who had cornered her months ago. The crowd fell silent. The instructors should have stopped it, but no one moved. They wanted to see what would happen. Looked at the 3 massive warriors standing before her. Each one was twice her size. Each one could break her bones with a single blow. She had no weapons. She had no special powers. She had nothing but herself. She smiled. Attacked first, swinging a clawed hand at her head. Ducked under it, stepped inside his reach and drove her elbow into his throat. While he choked, she grabbed his arm and twisted it sharply. The joint broke with a crack that echoed through the arena. Roared and charged, did not retreat. She ran toward him, dropped to her knees at the last second and slid between his legs. As she passed beneath him, she grabbed his ankle and pulled. He fell hard. Before he could rise, she jumped onto his back and yanked his shoulder from its socket. Was smarter than the others. He circled her carefully, looking for an opening, but did not give him one. She had watched him fight for months. She knew every move he favored, every weakness in his stance. She feinted left. He reacted as she predicted. She stepped right, wrapped her arm around his neck and squeezed. A blood choke, cutting off circulation to his brain. He struggled, but human arms were stronger than they looked. In 15 seconds, he went limp. 47 seconds, 3 warriors, 1 human girl. The arena was completely silent. Then someone began to clap. Then another. Soon the entire crowd was applauding, though many looked confused about why they were doing it. A voice called out from the observation deck, "How did you do that?" Looked up, hundreds of alien faces stared down at her. "Humans are pursuit predators," she said. Her voice was calm despite her racing heart. "On our world we hunted animals much faster and stronger than us. We did not have claws or fangs or venom, so we learned to watch. We learned to wait. We learned to use our enemy's strength against them." She paused. "Every species here relies on natural advantages. We have none, so we learned to steal the advantages of others." The silence that followed was heavier than before. In the back of the observation deck, a woman in a gray uniform watched with careful eyes. Her name was Admiral Cora Vance. She was the only other human in Coalition space, commander of Earth's small interstellar fleet. She had traveled a long way to see this girl. After the tournament, she found alone in a corridor, treating a cut on her arm. "That was impressive," the Admiral said. Looked up, her eyes widened when she recognized the uniform. "Admiral Vance, I did not know you were here." "I came to see what all the fuss was about." The Admiral sat down beside her. "Do you know why they really fear you? It is not because you are strong or fast or smart. By their standards, you are none of those things." "Then why?" Admiral Vance smiled. "Because you are not special among us. You are average, a normal human girl from a normal human family. And if an average human can do what you have done, they are terrified of what happens when they meet an exceptional one." Considered this. "Is that true? Am I really average?" "By human standards, yes. Your test scores back on Earth were good but not remarkable. Your physical abilities are normal for your age. There is nothing in your genetics that sets you apart." The Admiral put a hand on her shoulder. "That is what makes you terrifying to them. You are proof of what our entire species can do, and there are 8 billion more just like you back home." She stood to leave, then paused. "Keep going, Cole. The galaxy is watching now. Show them what humanity really is." That night lay awake in her room, thinking about the Admiral's words. Somewhere out there, beings who had lived for were studying her. Somewhere out there, warriors and scholars and leaders were trying to understand how a human could do the things she had done. She did not feel special. She did not feel powerful. She felt like the same scared girl who had stepped off the shuttle 4 months ago. But maybe that was the point. Maybe being human meant being scared and doing it anyway. Maybe it meant being weak and finding strength. Maybe it meant being ordinary and achieving the extraordinary. She closed her eyes and slept. Tomorrow, she would wake up early and do it all again. That was what humans did. The attack came without warning on a day that had started like any other. Was in her advanced tactics class when the first explosion shook the station. The lights flickered. Alarms began to scream. Through the windows, she saw ships pouring out of a hole in space that had not existed moments before. The Hollow had arrived. Every student at the academy knew about the Hollow. They were machines from beyond the galaxy, an artificial intelligence that had destroyed 17 civilizations. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They harvested organic mines for processing and left dead worlds behind them. For centuries, the Coalition had believed they were safe. The Hollow operated far from Coalition space, but someone had been wrong, someone had miscalculated, and now death had come to Apex Prime. The station's shields fell in minutes. Defense platforms that had protected the Academy for thousands of years were torn apart like paper. Hollow drones poured through the breaches, silver machines with too many limbs and glowing red sensors where eyes should be. Students ran screaming through the corridors. Some tried to fight and were captured, dragged away by harvester units for neural extraction. Others reached escape shuttles only to watch them explode before takeoff. The Hollow were efficient. They had done this many times before. Did not run to the shuttles. She had seen the Council of Ancients arrive that morning for a diplomatic summit. 12 immortal beings, the and most powerful in the galaxy, were somewhere in this station. If the Hollow captured them, the knowledge of 10,000 years would be lost. She moved through the chaos with purpose. She had memorized the station's layout months ago, every corridor, every maintenance shaft, every emergency route. While others fled in panic, she navigated the station like it was an extension of her own body. Near the central chamber, she found bodies, Coalition guards who had died protecting their charges. Their weapons were scattered across the floor. Grabbed a plasma cutter, a tool meant for engineering, not combat. It was better than nothing. The doors to the council chamber were sealed. Could hear sounds of battle inside, energy weapons firing, things breaking, screams that did not sound human because they were not. She looked at the plasma cutter in her hand. It was not powerful enough to breach the doors. But there was another way. She found a ventilation shaft near the ceiling and used the plasma cutter to remove the grate. The shaft was small, barely large enough for her body. Could never fit. A crystal form would be too wide, but was human. She was small and flexible and determined. She crawled through darkness, following the sounds of fighting below. The shaft grew hot from nearby fires. Smoke filled her lungs. She kept moving. When she finally reached the council chamber, she looked down through another grate and saw horror. 6 of the ancients were down, either unconscious or dead. The remaining 6 had formed a circle, using their vast powers to hold off dozens of hollow units. But they were weakening. Their attacks, which should have destroyed the machines instantly, were barely slowing them down. The Hollow had been designed specifically to counter organic abilities. They had not been designed to counter humans. Kicked out the grate and dropped into the chamber. She landed on top of a hollow unit, driving her plasma cutter into its central sensor. The machine sparked and died. The Hollow commander processed this new variable. Its probability matrices analyzed the threat. Human female. No psychic abilities detected. No enhanced physical capabilities. Minimal threat level. This analysis was wrong. Did not fight like the ancients. She did not rely on powers or abilities the Hollow could predict. She fought like a human, which meant she fought dirty and desperate and without any rules at all. She used her own body as bait, letting harvester drones chase her into positions where she could ambush them. She led 3 into a corner and collapsed a heavy display case onto them. She found a fallen drone and tore out its power cell, throwing it into a cluster of machines where it exploded. When one unit grabbed her arm, she did not pull away. She stepped closer, jammed her plasma cutter into the gap between its armor plates, and held the trigger until its internal circuits melted. She screamed from the pain of the heat burning her hands, but she did not stop. An ancient named the eldest of them all had fallen near the chamber's edge. A harvester drone was dragging him toward the exit, sprinted across the room, jumped onto the drone's back, and severed its limbs one by one. Then she grabbed and pulled. He was heavy, far heavier than any being should be, but pulled anyway, her muscles tearing, her back screaming in protest. She pulled him behind a barricade while fighting off 2 more drones with her free hand. The hollow commander recalculated. This human was destroying its units at a rate that should have been impossible. Her movements did not follow predicted patterns. Her pain responses did not trigger retreat behavior. Every model the commander used failed to explain what it was seeing. It decided to eliminate her personally. The commander unit was larger than the others, armored and armed with weapons that could melt through starship hulls. It advanced on, who was bleeding from a dozen wounds and could barely stand. She looked at the machine. It looked at her. In its cold electronic mind, it calculated a 99% probability of her death. Smiled. She had noticed something during the fight. The commander's optical sensor was its primary processing unit. It needed clear vision to coordinate the other drones, and it was exposed. She charged. The commander fired, but she had already dropped to the ground, sliding across the blood-slicked floor. She came up inside its reach, too close for its weapons to track, and she drove her plasma cutter directly into its eye. The machine grabbed her. Its claws pierced her shoulder. She screamed and pushed the cutter deeper, holding the trigger, pouring every remaining bit of energy into the machine's brain. They fell together. The commander's systems failed. The other drones froze without coordination, and Cole lay in a pool of blood and oil, still gripping her weapon, still breathing. Coalition reinforcements breached the chamber 3 minutes later. They found a scene they could not understand. Dozens of destroyed hollow units. The Council of Ancients, battered but alive. And in the center of it all, a small human girl covered in wounds, standing on shaking legs, still positioned between the machines and the beings she had saved. Oldest of the Ancients looked at her with an expression no human had ever received from his kind. It was not gratitude. It was not admiration. It was reverence, pure and absolute. "In 10,000 years," he said softly, "I have never seen anything like you." Tried to answer, but her body had finally reached its limit. She collapsed into the arms of the soldiers who rushed to catch her. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was voice, speaking to someone she could not see. "Protect this one. She is more important than she knows," woke in a white room filled with soft light. Her body ached in ways she had never felt before. Bandages covered her arms, her shoulder, her hands. Medical machines hummed quietly around her, displaying numbers in languages she did not recognize. She tried to sit up and gasped from the pain. A moment later, a medical officer rushed to her side, with gentle hands and worried eyes. "Please do not move," he said. "Your injuries were severe. You had internal bleeding, a collapsed lung, burns on 40% of your hands, and 3 fractured ribs. By all medical standards, you should not be alive." "How long was I unconscious?" asked. 6 days. 6 days, it felt like moments. The Council of Ancients, are they safe? The medical officer smiled. "They are safe because of you." Visitors came in waves over the following days. Sorai arrived first, her 4 hands trembling as she sat beside the bed. She did not speak for a long time. She simply sat there, looking at with eyes that had finally learned to see her. "I am sorry," Sorai finally said, "for everything, for being ashamed to be seen with you, for believing what others said about humans." Tears ran down her green cheeks. "You saved beings who have lived for 10,000 years, and I was embarrassed to be your roommate." Reached out and took one of her hands. "You are here now, that is what matters." Came next. The massive had to duck to fit through the medical bay door. He stood at the foot of her bed, his tail low, his eyes unable to meet hers. Then slowly, he lowered himself to his knees. It was the warrior's gesture of respect, the one reserved only for those they considered their equals or betters. In 2,000 years of their recorded history, no had ever knelt to a human. "I was wrong about your kind," he said quietly. "We called you weak because you are small. We called you primitive because you are young. But you have shown strength that we do not possess, courage that we cannot match." He looked up at her. I would be honored to fight beside you, Cole, if you would allow it. Stand up, said gently. You do not need to kneel to me. We are, that is enough. Even came, though he stood in the doorway and did not enter the room. His crystal body flickered with colors that had learned to read over the past months. Shame, guilt, something that might have been regret. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. After a long moment, he simply nodded once and left, for that was enough. It was more than she had ever expected. When she was strong enough to walk, the Council of Ancients summoned her. The council chamber had been repaired, though scars remained on the walls where the hollow weapons had struck. The 12 ancients sat in their usual positions, but their eyes followed as she walked slowly toward them. She had refused the wheelchair the medical officers offered. She would stand before them on her own feet. The eldest descended from his seat. It was the first time any of them had lowered themselves to speak to a mortal at eye level. The other ancients watched in silence. We have debated among ourselves, said. We asked why humans survive. You have no natural weapons. You have no armor or venom or psychic gifts. Your bodies are fragile. Your lives are brief. By every measure we use to judge species, you should have perished long before reaching the stars. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the countless years reflected in his ancient eyes. We understand now, he continued. You survive because you refuse not to. You adapt because you have no other choice. You protect others because you know what it is to be weak, and so you cannot bear to see weakness exploited. He placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle despite its immense power. You are not mighty despite being human. You are mighty because you are human. Felt tears forming in her eyes but forced them back. I only did what anyone would do. No, said. That is exactly what makes your kind remarkable. You truly believe that. Every human would say the same thing, and that is why you terrify us. The coalition announced the Battle of Apex Prime as a turning point in the war against the Hollow. The footage of a lone human girl defending the Council of Ancients spread across every world. Species who had ignored humanity began requesting human advisors. Governments that had dismissed Earth as a primitive backwater started building embassies there. Cole became famous, though she never wanted fame. Her image appeared in news broadcasts across the galaxy. Her name was spoken in war colleges and diplomatic halls. Children of 100 species learned her story in their schools. But she did not change. She returned to her classes as soon as she was able. She still woke before everyone else. She still trained after everyone slept. She still studied everything she could find. When new human students arrived at the academy, nervous and frightened by the aliens around them, they found her waiting at the shuttle bay. It is okay, she told them with a smile. They are scared of us too, they just do not know it yet. The academy established new traditions that year. Human history became a required subject for all students. Human tactical methods were added to advanced strategy courses. And every year, on the anniversary of the Battle of Apex Prime, the entire coalition held a moment of silence to honor those who had fallen and to remember the human girl who had held the line. Admiral Vance visited her one last time before returning to Earth. They stood on an observation deck, watching stars drift past the station windows. You have changed everything, the Admiral said. Because of what you did, humanity has a place in this galaxy, a real place, not just tolerance. Shook her head. I did not do anything special, I just did not give up. That is what makes it special, the Admiral smiled. That is what makes us special. We are not the strongest or the fastest but we do not stop, we never stop, and now the entire galaxy knows it. Far away in the depths of unexplored space, the Hollow's Central Intelligence completed its analysis of the Battle of Apex Prime. It had processed every piece of data, every probability, every outcome, and it had reached a conclusion that no machine should be capable of reaching. It was afraid. It added a new entry to its threat database. Priority level, maximum. Species designation, human. Recommended strategy, avoidance. The machines had conquered 17 civilizations. They had destroyed worlds without mercy. They had believed themselves unstoppable. But they had never faced anything like humans before. And now they knew. Back on Apex Prime, Cole finished her evening training session and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, trillions of beings were learning what humanity could do. Somewhere out there, children were hearing her name and dreaming of the stars. Somewhere out there, the future was waiting. She smiled, turned off the lights, and went asleep. Tomorrow, she would wake up early and do it all again. Because that was what humans did. They endured, they adapted, they survived. And they never, ever stopped.